much hype is too much? Let's talk about it today on the Extended Cutline Podcast. Hi, everybody. I'm Nate Beyer of GX3 Media, presenting the Extended Cutline Podcast. And today we're going to talk about the number 1 versus number 2 matchup we had last week. Yeah, let's break this down. We had number 1 versus number 2 in terms of our boys basketball state rankings. In Division 5, we had number 1 Kickapoo traveling to number 2 North Crawford. Now, in and of itself, take the rankings aside, that's an interesting boys basketball matchup, especially this year. Maybe not 10 years ago, but this year, that's an important matchup in the Ridge and Valley Conference. Those are your best 2 teams. I think DeSoto's knocking on the door a little bit. Again, as both of those, our number 1 and our number 2 have found out recently. But again, we came into this matchup last week. I heard rumors. I heard swirling. I got messages. Hey, number 1 versus number 2. Number 1 versus number 2. Are you coming? Are you coming? Are you going to buy in? That's a big deal. I'm going to be very honest with all of you. I don't care about rankings. They mean absolutely nothing to me. And I typically don't buy into these overhyped, overinflated matchups because typically we'd get a snoozer of a ball game. The folks that do rankings don't always necessarily actually see the teams that they're ranking. They just throw numbers on a sheet of paper and they turn in their numbers, and that's how we rank teams. Well, this team must be good because they were good 5 or 10 years ago, and they've had the longevity of some sort of success. This team is new. We don't really trust them. You gotta earn your way in. Anyways, I'm gonna put it out. I'm gonna put it out there. Our number 1 versus number 2 matchup pretty much did live up to our hype. And there was hype. I think there was probably more hype if you actually lived in those communities. If you lived in or around those communities, the hype was easier to find. The hype was easier to be mired in because there was buzz. Somehow, it's interesting to me working in media. I know what media does. Media tends to stir up a hornet's nest. No matter what you want to say about the media. And when it comes to sports media, one of the problems that happens with sports media is we're supposed to be, those who are covering teams, we're supposed to be evaluating teams in a way and propping up. We like to prop up certain games. Well, when we look at ways to prop up a game like this, if you're in the media, you're looking at number 1 versus number 2, and you say, wow, that's a really important thing because that's your best 2 teams in the state. And again, the perceived best 2 teams in the state going up against each other, duking it out. That's fine. I tried not to buy into that. But as we got closer and closer and closer to that date and closer to the game and closer in, that game day, closer to tip off, I bought in. I said, why not? I don't have to love the rankings, but that is what it is. And I'm going to lean in on this because quite honestly, love or hate rankings, you can't deny that it's a really compelling matchup when you put the top 2 ranked teams in the state in the same conference and have them face off against each other. You can't deny that that's an interesting, a compelling storyline to follow. That's pretty cool. I bought in. I was pretty low key about it. I had people asking throughout the week. I knew what I was going to do. I think I had talked to some people the week before, and they kept pushing this 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2. And I said, you know what? That's probably a good idea. An even better idea is to just take everything else that night and just push it over onto the, shoulder of the road, leave it there. Focus on one game. For those of you who have followed me, even hopefully in a short period of time, you understand I don't normally post up at just one game in a night. I love hitting 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 games in a night, if possible. So to give up all of those other options for one game, well, golly gee, this game better be worth it. And I'm here to say, I think it kind of was. And it wasn't necessarily all the game bits, because there are some parts within the game and some sloppiness at the end, a lot of missed free throws, by the way, that made it a little less compelling. when we actually properly evaluate what this game was. But this was a community event. This was some sort of vehicle that brought community to these small towns in a way that you don't normally get. Even with the town festival, you don't necessarily get the same buy-in and draw that you somehow got with this game. That was cool. So wow, we've been talking for 5 minutes already. I'm sorry, everybody. Let's try to keep on pace here. So I'm going to walk through what I'm going to do with this video, so that way you understand what I'm trying to do. And in execution, maybe it does fail. So while I'm speaking, I'm running video. I ran video throughout the night, here and there. Again, I tried to find ways to balance my, photography needs. Still, photography needs to come first, but I wanted to be able to tell some sort of narrative through video, because video does kind of just very raw in a very raw manner. That's not again, in a very raw manner, very plain manner. It shows you what happened. I'm not going to necessarily judge the good or the bad here. Again, I'm going to let these highlights run and allow you to watch as I speak. So let's walk through my day. I already talked about the hype going into this game. Number 1 versus number 2. Kickapoo is ranked number 1, North Crawford number 2. Crawford's been at the top of the Ridge and Valley Conference a number of times. In the past, 30 years? A lot of times. Kickapoo has not. I have to look at my records, but I'm pretty sure the last time Kickapoo won a Ridge and Valley Conference title might have been 1997. That's a while ago. And Kickapoo has probably had a couple of decent teams in that time, but I've never seen them compete for the top. Or anytime the Kickapoo had a decent team, there was always a better group at North Crawford or at a Seneca. Or, Wasikastubin had a stretch there in the last 10 years where they were pretty good more often than not. And every now and again, you might get a weird, I think Ithaca's had a burst here. You might get something wild out of a Lafarge group like we did, 10, 12 years ago. I get it. But Kickapoo hasn't had basketball success, especially not on the boys' side, in quite some time. So let's buy into this. Let's break this down and see what I was seeing. I looked at it this way. I looked at it in this way. These things don't happen every day, regardless of what the rankings were. They got ranked. And people are going to buy in. And the fact of the matter is, you've got not just two top 10 ranked teams in the same conference, but the number 1 and the number 2. Let's see how that plays out. I loved not having any other event on the calendar. I showed up at Crawford at around 5:30. So we're talking even 15 minutes, 20 minutes before JV warmed up. And there are a lot of people already at the school. The parking lot was not parked full, but I mean, it definitely had more cars in it than I kind of would have expected for a weird, 5:20 in the afternoon sort of thing. Anyways, I walked inside, I brought the backpack, I set up a workstation outside of the gym. That way I could just, kill some time, work through some things. I just tried not to get emotionally invested in the game, because I know what happens. When I get emotionally invested, I don't shoot very well. Inside the gym, here's what I saw. Nothing out of the ordinary. Apparently there was some sort of like junior high girls thing going on in the alternative gym, so that probably sucked up a few folks. In the regular gym, it looked like a pretty normal situation. But then once we got to tip off for the JV game, I looked at the space behind the team benches. The Kickapoo side was already full. The Crawford side was basically full. And it just, the other half of the gym was going to catch up in the next 45 minutes. And it did. People kept coming in the door, even during warmups, even just at the tail end of actual varsity warmups. We still had people trickling in the door. Now, keep in mind, by the time we get to the end of varsity warmups, the place is already full. What do? I watch people show up 6:30 or so, look for a spot, see that there isn't a spot, and walk out of the gym. Now, some of them actually may have left the building. Some of them, I think, just walked to a different side and hope they could, elbow and toe their way into a spot in the bleachers so they could sit on top of somebody right next to them. And that's what they did. And they sat there from 6:30, 6:10, 5:45 in some cases, until almost 9:45, 10 o'clock. Because by the time this game got over, we had to play through 2 extra periods. We had timeouts. We had free throws. I mean, there were a lot of clock stoppages. This game kind of drug on, especially at the end. Despite the 2 overtimes, take that away. But we just had other things that just pushed this game late. Some of these people came and moved into the gym and didn't get to move out of their little, 18-inch by 18-inch space for almost 4 hours. That's wild. Think about that. I joked at some point in time, or at various points throughout the night, I joked about making new friends. Making new friends because you're going to basically be sitting in, on, and around somebody's lap. And the only way to make that comfortable is to say, hey, hi, I'm John, you're Jane. I guess I'm on your lap. We're going to watch this game together. Let's talk about it. This game was fun. This night was fun. I'm really glad. If I didn't make it clear, and I think I did, I'm really glad that I canceled everything else for this thing. It was a cool experience to be in that gym and to have that gym swelling with emotion. Now, I've been in that gym for some big games before. I don't really remember the situation completely, but when I was a senior in high school, this would have been the fall of 2000, Royal played Cuba City in a sectional semifinal volleyball match. I don't remember what the gym was like, but I do remember it was pretty full. I remember going there 2009, 10, 11, somewhere in there. Hillsborough played a sectional final volleyball match. Guess what? It wasn't as full as what I saw. Did I see Royal play CFC there once? Maybe I did in a volleyball sectional semifinal. I think I did. It wasn't that full. It wasn't as full as what I saw last week. Says something about how volleyball kind of maybe doesn't draw the same way as basketball does. No matter what, basketball still draws. People understand the general concept of basketball, so it's easy for them to come watch. It's a casual game for people to get involved with. I think volleyball still has some, this is a sidebar. Volleyball has some bits and bobs that not the general public doesn't necessarily understand, and they, for whatever reason, don't find it that exciting, whatever. But we had a boys basketball game, and this place was full. The corners where you don't have bleachers were full. People fought to see the game. You're looking around people. You're fighting off somebody next to you just so you can get a better vantage point. I knew that I was running into trouble. I knew that I would run into trouble because that gym doesn't have deep baselines. Your baselines are out of bounds line, maybe 1-2 feet of space, and then there's a cement wall. So what happens? For me, that makes for a really difficult work environment because I just can't get away from the action enough to actually frame it up certain ways. I knew that would be one of my biggest struggles. But we limped through and I said, give it your best shot. Let's just giddy up and let's see what happens. So the game was fun. Every bucket, every score, every foul, we had excited parents. We had excited coaches. We had excited fans. It was cool. It was really cool. The game progressed. I don't know, I don't know which team you expected to win. You kind of had had 2 teams with different styles. One's a little bit more athletic. One's a little bit longer, taller. One's been a proven commodity. One has been an unproven commodity. How is it going to play out? Well, I honestly thought Crawford went up pretty big. I think they took like a 10-point lead early on. I kind of thought the game was going to be a dud because most ranked games are. It's just hype. And the kids, especially today's types of kids, they buy into hype and they forget that there's still a game to play. Being ranked doesn't mean anything. But guess what? Kickapoo kept chipping away. They never went away. They never stopped. When they were down double digits, they just kept plugging and working. and working. And eventually they took a lead. Now, this was midway through the second half, but eventually they took a lead and they nursed it and they built it and they stretched it, only to have Crawford find a way to claw back into the game. We went to overtime. Actually, it's funny. One of the officials came over and joked with me towards the end. He's like, yeah, there's a good chance we're going to have overtime. I called it. I'm like, okay, overtime. It came down to free throws, I think, which put him into overtime. I think there was an opportunity. Somebody went 2 for 3, whatever. Overtime. Great. Let's play through it. Cool. Same thing happened. Kickapoo had a chance. Couldn't close it out because, again, couldn't make free throws. Crawford did. Go to a second overtime. Play through that. Somebody finally makes a couple of free throws to stretch out a lead. And just, again, Kickapoo just had a very narrow advantage, but they found a way to exploit it. It was really fun. Everybody got excited at the end. Some were sad. Most were happy, especially if you were the away team. Everybody went home thinking, hopefully believing that they saw a somewhat historic matchup, especially in this part of the state. We don't have those types of matchups in this part of the state ever. And again, I don't pay attention to rankings, so maybe we could have had a 1 versus 2 at some point in time. It doesn't matter, whatever sport it is. We don't really get highly touted meetings like this. The only thing I can think of, somehow we lucked into a Bangor-Cashton football matchup where I think Cashton was 1, Bangor was 2. I think 2022? Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't able to go to that game. Again, I didn't put it at the top of my priority list because I said, there's a good chance they meet again in the playoffs. Guess what happened? They met again in the playoffs. That also was a historic, very, very memorable game, maybe even more so because the stakes were higher. Guess what? You lose in the playoffs, your season's bye-bye, done. Whereas what we had last week, as much fun as it was, it ultimately doesn't change much. North Crawford lost 85-80. It took 2 overtimes. They're going to go to Kickapoo. They're going to get another shot at those powerful Panthers. And can they win? Again, that game should be a big deal, probably even a bigger deal. If you're Kickapoo, you have a chance to take your defending conference champions. Again, if everybody holds their win seeds, whatever, nobody coughs up a game they shouldn't. We could potentially have Crawford could be playing for a co-championship type spot, or Kickapoo's trying to give them 2 losses. And if you take 2 losses, probably not winning a conference title. Again, not the end of the world, because there's a postseason, and that's where things, matter maybe a little bit more. I will always say winning a conference title is important, but it's never bad to have a long, lengthy tournament run. So how much fun was this? For me, it was a lot of fun. I'm talking about this about a week later. I went into the Midwest Players Classic the next day. Crawford did the same thing. They played a double overtime game. 15 hours later, they're playing basketball again. I didn't know how that would go. I thought it would look sloppy. I walked into the lacrosse center. Keep in mind, lacrosse center is a big space, bigger court, lots of space behind your backboards. It can be a shooter's nightmare if you're not used to it. And, well, if you're rested and all that, Crawford wasn't. But they shot lights out. They took Melrose Mondoro and had their way with him, more or less. And I think that anyways, again, that doesn't happen. But I also was trying to get to this event the next day that started at 1:00. I didn't have a lot of time at home. I didn't have a lot of recovery time at home. I barely got photos out from Thursday. There's still a lot of stuff I would like to see. I haven't even gone through every photograph from that game. That's just how backed up I am right now. But I couldn't get to this talk about this game. So some of my thoughts and impressions are a week old and probably stale, and you don't really want to hear them, but you're still listening, aren't you? So anyways, the point of it is we had a lot more basketball to get through. I've had more time to put my thoughts together, but this thing doesn't happen very often. That's why it was fun. It was great for anybody that showed up to that ball game. I hope they had a good time. I had a good talk with Pete Walby from the Viroqua radio station afterwards, and he remarked about the impressiveness of the game, the contest, and how it just kind of lived up to, I would say, expectations. And that's something that I hope the second meeting can do the same, because those two teams probably aren't going to be ranked 1 and 2 the next time they meet. But that game is ultimately more important. And honestly, I would like to see what Kickapoo's gym would look like if you filled it to capacity. The cool balcony upstairs. I mean, what would happen? What happens when you fill the upstairs? That place probably hasn't seen that type of an atmosphere 10, 15, 20 years. I remember being there for the girls in like 2004 or 5, like when the girls team was really good. I think they went to state that year, and that demanded a pretty high crowd. But you know as well as I do, more people show up for boys. So when you have a meaningful boys game, meaningful boys team, you're going to draw. Anyways, like I said, this thing was fun. Did I shoot it well? I pulled out a lot of stops. Wide, tight, medium, slow shutter, fast shutter. Tried some weird angles, tried to detach, again, from my photographer's brain, I tried to detach myself from what I expected, like my normal expectations, bank a few shots, but then go experiment, try some things. I thought that I tried so many different creative things. I looked as hard as I could. I had my work hat on to, flit here, flit there, be everywhere, shoot everything, shoot a lot of faces in the crowd, get a lot of groups of people here and there, because no matter what, it's kind of cool to look back and see who was actually at that game. So let's just document this whole thing kind of in the round. A nice 360, not just from a Kickapoo perspective, not just from a North Crawford perspective, but from a 360-degree neutral perspective. Again, that kind of wrecked me for the weekend, because I went, like I said, Midwest Players Classic. I couldn't dial in for the next 2 days to save my life. I wanted to try some creative things, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. As much as you might talk up, or anybody who involved with that event, and it's a pretty good event. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to bring in those teams from 2 or 3 different states to pull off this big, this big production. And I'm glad that we have it in this part of the state, because we don't have a lot of cool things like that when it comes to basketball. Those all exist on the eastern side of the state, in that Milwaukee area, maybe a little bit in the Madison area or that Fox Cities area, but we don't have it over here. I just couldn't dial in though. I was burnt out. Took me halfway through Friday to realize you're burnt out, idiot, because you dove into this game. There was, even if you didn't think you were buying into the energy, I was buying into the energy. I bought into all of the fun that went into the, 1 versus 2. And even though the Midwest Players Classic is supposed to be a big basketball deal, and it is to a point, it didn't really hold a candle to anything I saw on Thursday. And number one, Lacrosse Center is not full. I couldn't even say half, might say 25% full. Might, and that might be stretching it. The people that are coming to watch, sometimes it's just, those folks are basketball junkies. They want to just watch basketball, but they don't have that red, venomous blood inside them, venomous, again, towards an opponent. That doesn't come when you have neutral matchups. It doesn't matter if Team A from Wisconsin beats Team B from Minnesota. No, because ultimately it has very, very, very little bearing on things that matter, like conference titles or furthering your postseason. Even there, if you had number 1 Wisconsin versus number 2 Minnesota in the same, equal division, it's not going to stack up the same way. We can't quantify that. But again, when you put number 1, number 2 in the same conference, playing for conference positioning, it makes everything different. Really different. And that's where I felt I kind of went wrong the rest of the weekend. I probably spent too much time at the center. I should have bounced out and tried to find as many, all the sport things that were around town. I went away from kind of my bread and butter, which is go to as many things as possible. I didn't do that. Kind of wrecked my weekend because I got bored. I was falling asleep at one point in time because that, no matter what, that's a lot of basketball to sit through. You have to really love basketball to stay engaged that entire time. And I've got a dude from Caledonia that comes and he'll sit and he'll, keep a scorebook. That's cool, but that keeps you engaged. But even he wasn't there for every single game. Personally, I mean, I wasn't either. I skipped a couple by leaving the building, and a couple just by I just shut down. I just couldn't do it. So, what's my takeaway from Thursday? Takeaway from Thursday was, holy cow, that was warm inside Crawford's gym. It was okay to be outside afterwards. Hey, today, because I'm going to drop this on Friday, today's supposed to be cold. Think about this. If you went to that game, or even if you didn't, think about putting the gym that you're used to. Doesn't matter whether you are in Lancaster, whether you are at Waniwak, whether you are at Oliva Strum. Think of that gym, pack it with people, and then put another 100 people in that gym. So pack it in your mind, mentally pack it, and then add another 100 people. How warm is that going to be? It's going to be warm. Could be a little moist. Going to be pretty friendly accommodations. Kind of cool. You don't get that in high school sports anymore. Number one, our gyms are too big. We build these giant palaces because we think we're going to host tournament games. And even then, nobody shows up to tournament games. So I will talk about Viroqua. Viroqua has not had a great track record in the past 15 years, 20 years for either the boys or girls basketball programs. However, go to Viroqua, there's good energy in that gym because it is a proper size for the crowd that actually shows up. I love going to Gilmanton. Why? Well, there's just something about going to the G House, about the 5 rows of bleachers. Everybody's on top of each other. The place always looks full. And let's flip it. I have gone to the Westby Fieldhouse dozens of times. It's never full. Even when you have a high-level tournament game, it's not full. It was a good idea to build the thing. I get it. But we can't fill it. Osseo Fairchild is a cool place when it's full. Arcadia would be a cool place if it's full. Never fills. Black River Falls is a great new facility. Well, I guess it's 10 years old at this point in time, but again, we never see it full. Even if it's full, your baselines never get full because they're so deep. Is that a problem? Yeah. The whole point is to create these full, compact. Again, if you want to make that Hollywood-looking basketball dreamscape, where that Hoosiers atmosphere, where everybody's on top of everybody, honestly, you've got to cut down the amount of bleachers that you have in your gym, which kind of flies in the face of the notion of building a brand new gym to hold more people. There has to be a way to kind of split the needle? Whatever. Thread the needle. There we go. To make that work. Some places are too small. One of the places that I do, I talked about Viroqua, GET, when the GET boys and girls were both humming, again, we're looking at 8, 10, 12 years ago, that place was always full. The GET nights where they had boy-girl doubleheader, you struggled to find a place to sit because everybody would show up early. Yeah, most of them showed up for the boys' game. I get that. But it was must-see action, and people showed up. That's what I want to see for everybody. Everybody. It was fun to see it last week. It was a tease. It was a tease, though, because we don't get that on a night-to-night basis. Next time you go to a game, look at who's in the stands. Count the number of bodies on either, especially the visiting team. Count the number of bodies on the visiting team. If they have 15 girls, you should have 30 parents in the stands. And if you don't have that number, that's pretty sad. It shouldn't just take a number 1 versus number 2 to put butts in seats. To me, and I'm old-fashioned, if your community is doing a thing, you go to the thing the community is doing. And that's what I really loved about last week. Communities showed up. They didn't argue left or right politics. Didn't argue, who's right or wrong about this measure, that measure, whatever. It's sports, and that's how sports brings us together. If you were from Viola, Reedstown, whatever's in between, you had red and black in your eyeballs. If you showed up from Gates Mills, Soldiers Grove, or those places in between, Bell Center. Okay, how about that, Bell Center? I'm pretty sure that's where they come to Crawford. You had the maroon and the silver. I don't know, and you're ready to go. That's the color you were seeing. If you've seen a game like that, let me know. Drop a note, drop a comment, reflect on that. Think about the game with the most juice, the game with the most clout, and just the wildest atmosphere. If I'm going to talk about something that I kind of recall as being a tight fit, I remember 2011 Royal and Hillsborough played in a regional championship game. I believe that was the first year. No, that was supposed to be a neutral site game. I think it was supposed to be in Holman. They moved it and they brought it to Waniwak. I still question that move just simply because Waniwak is a gymnasium. I still don't think it's big enough for a regional championship basketball game, especially between those two teams. And that place was full. They had chairs all over the place. You couldn't move. But they played, and that place was wild. The same thing happened. Swells in either direction, depending on who shot the baskets. And Royal trailed, I think, the entire game until like the last second. Shot went in. They ended up winning by 1 or 2. It's those stories are the stuff of legends. And I think what happened last week at North Crawford should also go into that category. It's the stuff of legend. If you were a kid in junior high, 20 years from now, you'll look back and be like, wow, 1 versus 2. We were all yelling. We were yelling these nasty things at these boys. We had no idea who they were, but we hated them. Cool. Have that memory. Have that experience. I'm glad I added to my experience by going to this thing. Somehow I've droned on for 30 minutes. Anyways, that's my take on this. Was the game great? I thought the game was pretty good. Was it great? Without the overtime, because of the free throwing and all this, maybe meh. The overtime just makes it better. More overtime is better. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say about this. Stay warm today. Again, it's supposed to be cold. It's supposed to be, I hear lots of negative temperature things. Just put yourself in this position. The gym is full. Remember, your gym, fill it, and then add another 100 people where you're shoulder to shoulder, butt to butt, cheek to cheek, knee to knee, knee on knee, lap on lap. Everybody's a little warm, a little moist. But you're together. That's community. That's how you bring communities together. Again, no one's better than anybody else. You're all packed in like sardines. Or in last week's case, you're packed in the Trojan's den like a bunch of dudes inside the Trojan horse. What would it be like if they actually did have a Trojan horse at North Crawford? That's where I'm going to end this episode. Think about that. Trojan horse at North Crawford. And when the football team, let's put it out as a football team, comes out to the field, they come out in a Trojan horse, or they hide in there. It's an interesting concept. I got distracted. We'll leave it at that. Again, remember, this is the extended Cutline podcast for GX3 Media. I'm Nate Beyer. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you guys learned something. And like I said, think about that. Think about if you were there, how it hit you. Think about the biggest, most well-attended, wildest, crowdedest game that you've ever been at. Share those thoughts. Throw them in the comments. Send me a note. Cool. I like it. You guys have a great time. Hopefully we get sports on Saturday so we can all get out to do stuff. Otherwise, I guess I'll just be cold. Maybe I'll go shovel something. Thanks for listening. You guys have a great weekend. We'll see you at the next game and beyond.